Welcome to Restorative Yoga. So, what I have arrayed around me I have some yoga blocks. If you don't have yoga blocks, anything that could act like a block, stack of books, a couple of pots from your kitchen, some extra pillows. I've also got some little throw pillows. These work really great. And I have a yoga bolster and some blankets. I like a yoga bolster because it's really intended for this purpose. But what I use if I don't have one handy is either a couch cushion, or I'll take a couple of pillows and kind of roll them up in a blanket so they're a little more solid. Okay. So what we're going to do is we're going to sort of elevate our upper back, and then we'll do a butterfly with our lower body. So I'm going to take my blocks and put one so that it's on the medium side. It's about 6 inches tall, and one down lower. This one's 4 inches tall. Whatever you've got handy, just make like a slope out of your props or out of your books or your pots. And then put the bolster in front of it far enough that you can kind of smoosh it down. This part you might want a blanket for. So take an extra blanket or put a blanket nearby in case you want to add some support to your head. Now, one of the things about doing restorative yoga is it's sort of like the princess and the pea. When the princess in the story goes to bed, it seems okay at first. And then as she's laying there, she can feel this tiny little lentil in her bed. That's how they know she's a princess, see? And in this story, you're the princess. So you will find that if you don't take the time to set up your pose well so that you're able to be fully supported, in a little while, within a few minutes, you'll notice the little nagging discomfort. So when you find those things, then you'll adjust your pose so that it's more comfortable. Okay, so what I've got is a slope. I'm going to put my back on that. I've got something for my head in case I want it. And then I'm going to get myself seated in front of it, push down a little bit onto the cushion so that I can adjust my low back just right. I generally like it to touch right at the top of my pelvis. You might want it to be a little lower. Now I'm going to use my throw pillows for knee support. So I'm going to put my feet together and drop my knees open. And you may not need knee support, but if you do, grab the pillows, okay? And then you're going to let your arms hang. If this feels like it's I've got short arms, especially my upper arm bone. So if it feels too much for me, if this starts to get too spicy, I can always put a little blanket under each elbow or a small pillow or something, whatever I've got handy. Okay, so then take a few moments just to adjust the support. I'm going to pull this blanket down so it kind of cups the curve of my neck. And that allows me a little bit more of a sense that my head is releasing into the props. I like to be a little more upright. You might want to be a little closer to the ground. That's fine too. Oh. And then once you've got yourself settled, we're going to stay a while. So restorative yoga is intended, generally speaking, to relax the body. There are invigorating restorative sequences that involve more inversion practice and some other more upright poses, but generally it's used as a tactic to help release tension from the body. So it's a perfect yoga when you're recovering from something like a cold or a period of time where you've been overworked and you're feeling really tired. It's a great yoga practice for when you feel sort of like you haven't had enough time for yourself. And it's not a terrible yoga practice to do just once a week or something, to sort of give yourself a chance to slow down when your life is busy. And then you just let yourself, once you got in the props where it feels pretty good, just let yourself drop into them. Now, sometimes I find it very helpful to have some soft music going, especially if there's like little noises in your house that tend to distract you, or you're close to a street that's kind of busy. So if you have that nearby and you want to add that to your practice, you can. Otherwise, we're just going to stay here for about another 5 minutes or so, just letting ourselves relax into this shape and noticing the changes. I'm noticing, for example, that my left elbow is now touching the floor. My right shoulder's a little tighter, so it's not quite there yet, but it might get closer. So it's just as I'm letting my body relax and letting kind of the props and gravity do its work, I'm noticing the impact of the practice. And definitely, you may have to actively relax the places in your body where you carry your stress, like the neck muscles or the facial muscles. And you may have to come back to them, fairly frequently, just to check in and make sure you're not hardening around the eyebrows or the cheekbones or the lips. So we're in our last couple minutes here, and I'm going to use this opportunity to get my right side just a tiny bit more stretched out because it's not going to be as long. So I've turned my head to the left, and I've reached my right arm a little farther out to the side. I don't like my poses in restorative yoga to be too spicy at the beginning, but at the very end of a hold, I can kind of get a little more yin and let the pose become a tiny bit more sensation oriented. They're cousins, yin and restorative. They have different goals, but they're definitely cousins. So we're going to take 2 more big breaths. All right, so the first thing I'm going to do at the end of this exhale is I'm going to bring my knees together, because that was quite a while for the knees to be in that butterfly shape. And we're not in any kind of hurry to leave our shapes just immediately. If you feel like you need to bolt out of a shape, you were definitely holding tension, and you want to make sure that your practice has a little bit more support, because if you don't want to feel like you have to bolt out of a pose, that's definitely that was too intense. So now that my legs have had a chance to kind of straighten out and shake off, now I'm going to get myself up off these props here. So I'm going to push myself up to a seated position. Oh. And now that I'm here, I'm going to take a little bit of time to kind of rinse out my shoulders, because that was where I felt the most of the release. I would swear to you that my neck has grown 3 inches. It's delightful. I'm hoping you're having a similar experience. So, but it does feel nice to move. So you could drop your chin and roll your head around a few times. Oh, that's delicious. Especially if you kind of just got going this morning. If you've been going and you've already done a bunch of chores and been out to scavenge for toilet paper or whatever it is you've been up to, that's a different thing. But if you've kind of just got going, it'll be nice to do a little bit of work around your neck. Some little shoulder circles. All right, so we're going to set ourselves up for a forward bending shape, and I'm going to do a kind of in-between space. So rather than the fullest extension of a wide angle that gets a little spicier in my inner thighs, and rather than having my legs really close together, I'm going to kind of split the difference between those two. So I'm in a V, but it's not as wide as I can go. It's kind of a nice in-between shape. So I'm going to kick my sit bones out from under me a little bit just by rocking and leaning my pelvis forward. For those of you if your pelvis does not go forward, put some stuff underneath you. Sit up on a pillow or bend your knees a little bit and put pillows under your knees. That will be very helpful. I am going to put under my knees, to take the pressure away from the knee joint itself, a rolled up blanket. So I'm just going to take one of my blankets here. And I'm going to put that under my knees. Again, what we're going to do is we're going to fold. So I want to build up a stack of yoga props to meet me in my fold. So you could build an entire Stonehenge of yoga props. So for example, a couple of throw pillows or a couple of blocks, and then a couch cushion up on top, and then you can fold. For some people, it'll be easier to fold a little lower, so you'll make a little bit less of a stack. You might be able to push the props out in front of you. Now, when I fold, I like the props to kind of find my forehead, or my arms to find my forehead, so I have room to breathe, rather than fold into the props so that I can't breathe. And so see if it's too spicy. If it is, you can add more props under your knees, more props under your hips, more props to lean into. And then breathe and hold. Oh my goodness. So just letting yourself kind of fall forward into this practice, into this pose, seeing where it kind of takes you. Again, if it gets too spicy, you can back it off and add some extra props. And you don't have to remain perfectly still for these poses. You can kind of have like a little bit of a lean over to one side. I like to do that along the way while I'm hanging out with a shape. So maybe I'll lean into one sit bone a little bit more than the other for a couple of breaths. I'm kind of leaning into my left side right now. I'm just noticing the difference between the two sides now that I've created a slight imbalance. And then coming back toward the center and just seeing if there's a difference. And then kind of leaning the other way a little bit. It's not a big movement. It's really subtle, comparatively speaking, but enough that it gives me a little something to notice. So ultimately what we're doing when we do yoga is we're trying to be present. We're trying to notice the moment that we're in right now and not the moments that are happening later or things that have already happened. We're trying to really stay focused in the present moment. And so if our yoga practice is meant to be that kind of a thing for us, if it's meant to help us be present, then we can do little things to make it, to give ourselves a tool, right? So adding a slight adjustment to my pose helps me bring more awareness to the pose and to the moment I'm in, and it keeps me from wandering off with my mind. So we're going to stay for about another minute and a half. And try to notice if you're carrying any tension in your body that you can relax and let go of. So try to breathe really deeply into your low back, because that is the spot that's most interesting to me. I'm going to take one more big breath. Let go with a sigh. And then we're going to inhale our way up and kind of lean back a little bit. Give yourself a moment to bend your knees. So the way that I do this is I lean back and then I bend and then I bring the legs a little closer together. And then take a moment to kind of rinse out. And then once I've got my legs sort of in a happier place or in a place that feels like they're able to relax, then I can work on my spine, because I still feel like I'm folding forward, which is normal. So rinsing out any tension from the shoulders or the back, giving yourself some little, windshield wiper moves. Now, we're going to do a side bend. To do the side bend, we're actually going to let ourselves lay over the props. And if you practiced with me earlier this week with the yin, then you might recognize this pose, or maybe you practiced with me sometime other time. This might be a newer pose to you. So this bolster is way too big for my body to do what we're about to do. This bolster does just fine because it's thinner and it's a little smaller. So I'm going to use this. But what I did yesterday was I used a blanket. And so what you can do is take a blanket and you're going to want to fold it up fairly small. So I would fold it so that the width is about as wide as your ribs, and then fold it. So I'm going to fold this a little bit more, like a third. And then kind of roll it or fold it so that you've got sort of like a little miniature bolster. And this will work because it's basically just going to support your rib cage, right on? So we get a little bit of a side bend. So something like this where it has a nice profile about the same size as this guy, okay? And then you may want to have something for your head. I like to have a blanket for my head, so I'm going to have a blanket nearby for that purpose. I'm also going to keep a throw pillow handy because I like to have some leg support. Okay, so here's how we're going to do this. Oh, I probably built up too big a prop mountain for you to see. Okay, so I'm going to take my bolster and put it pretty close to my hip. And then I'm going to just kind of stretch out over it sideways, right on? And then once I'm here, I'm going to adjust the hip, keeping the knees for now bent. You're going to see if you can rest your head on your arm. And if that works, then this could be enough, right? If you need a little bit more support, you can put either a blanket in between your arm and your head, like that. Or you can put a pillow under your head and put your arm out straight, okay? So it really depends on your shoulder, the range of motion that your shoulder's comfortable with, and that your neck is comfortable. All right, so that's the first part to get comfy. The next part we're going to get comfy is the legs. Now, I'm a fan of extending out the top leg, and when I do yin, I really go for this sensation of opening and stretching across my IT band. When I'm doing restorative yoga, all I'm trying to do is relax this area because I tend to hold tension in my hips. It's normal, and in fact, it might be a stress response because the muscles that live in this area are responsible for our fight or flight abilities. They help us run away from danger, so they can get tight when we're stressed. So I'm going to put a little pillow between my two knees so that I've got a little softer sensation here. There's still a little length happening, but it's not at all spicy. Now this arm has a couple of choices. So you can take it up over your ear. That feels really nice to me today. Some days I like to drop it behind my back because I've got a little bit more tension here from leaning over the computer or the sewing machine. And maybe I want that to go back behind me. You can also kind of just cup it around your waist like that. Okay, so we're going to stay a little longer than we did for the yin. I think we stayed for about 3 minutes, 2.5 minutes for the yin, and we're going to stay for about another 4 minutes here. If you find that the hip bone right here, this little part of your femur, it's called the greater trochanter, which I think is a cool name. But if that part of your hip is pushing into a really hard floor surface, put a little blanket underneath the bottom hip and that'll help. Or even a towel would work if you don't have any more blankets. And then you just come back to that really deep breath, trying to allow the body to deeply relax. We're going to get the benefits of these different shapes. Side bending helps release tension from the intercostal muscles, the abdominals. It helps relieve tension from the hip and the muscles that live right here on this outer part of the hip, this kind of tight connective tissue area here. Side bending in terms of our spine helps push fluid through the walls of the cartilaginous rings within the disc, so it nourishes the discs. So we're getting all those benefits that we get from any yoga pose, and then we're also getting the benefit of trying to, or allowing ourselves to, deeply relax. And so just like I said about the princess and the pea, there's like a little wrinkle in my blanket, and now I'm feeling that. So I'm going to smooth that out and then come back. And for me, especially relaxing through the jaw and allowing my mouth to get softer and my lips to get softer is really important. That's, my primary or beginning stress holding place is my mouth. And we're about halfway through here, so we're almost there, wherever there is. Nice big breaths, yogis. We got about another minute here. So we've got 3 breaths left or so. All right, so to come out of this, we're going to start by bringing the top arm down, and then we're going to swing the legs up front. Now, we're going to do another pose kind of in a similar way, or in a similar position. We're going to turn this pose into a reclining twist. We're going to leave the legs going this way, but we got to get this blanket or bolster out from underneath our side waist. So to do that, I'm going to prop up on my elbow enough to get this guy out from under me. And then I'm going to let myself lay back down on my side for a moment and just let that release, okay? And what you can do if you want to is you can start this thing on your back and let your back relax that way. So you can roll onto your back. And just pause for a moment. That feels really good, actually. You should probably do this because it feels really nice. So you can give yourself some little windshield wipers. Oh, we're just letting the spine kind of shift the fluid back around. So what happens when we move the vertebrae in the spine is the discs, to accommodate that movement, they kind of push fluid around through the disc itself. So like it'll collapse or shear, as in the case of different kinds of bends. So if you have really healthy discs, this is generally not an issue. So for those of us that have some disc issues, maybe some herniation or bulging disc, whatever terminology's been used, I think they're very similar, if not the same. But if you have those kinds of conditions, sometimes these longer held poses with the spine can be a little tricky on the sides or the areas where those are. So you definitely want to make sure that you are doing things that make appropriate sense for what is happening in your spine. But if your spine is generally, you don't have any of those kinds of issues going on with your discs, or you don't have any spinal issues, these longer held poses feel really lovely, and they help nourish and keep the discs hydrated. So because of that movement of fluid. So now we're going to take this into a twist. So I'm going to keep my upper body on the floor. I'm going to bring my knees in. Now you can lift your pelvis up and tilt it like that, and that is a good way to get started. And then I'm going to let my legs rest. Now I like to have a pillow underneath my leg, and I also kind of like to let the top leg drape. And so I'm going to put another pillow under that foot. Like that. So I have my legs are resting on something, and that helps me relax. I also like to have a little bit of support under my upper back. So I'm going to take this blanket and put it underneath my head, and maybe even, if I can get it smoothed out enough, yeah, a little bit under my shoulder blades. Okay. So then I'm going to drape this arm out to the side, and I've got a pillow here holding my arm. If I were on the floor, I would just make sure my arm were touching the floor, okay? So you want to make sure that you are supported, so the upper back is resting. There's maybe an extension through the arm. It might be more comfortable to bring your arm up over your head or to bring your arm down by your side. So wherever it feels appropriate to leave your arm resting, because I've got these pillows here, this is just fine. And then I like to keep my head turned the same direction that my legs are going, but you can have your head turned straight up or even the other way if that's comfortable. Okay, so we're going to stay here for a bit. And so you're adjusting based on the pressure, how it feels in your spine. Add props to your legs or to your arms if you need, in order to be able to relax into this shape. I think this is the arm position for me right now. I've got some serious sunlight streaming in through my windows, so I've got little rainbow plays on the back of my eyeballs. But if you are feeling a little abused by sunlight, you can put something over your eyes as well. So again, the primary difference between yin and restorative is they have similar qualities. I tend to hold the restorative poses a little longer than I hold yin poses. But the goal of yin is to get to a place where you're feeling sensation, not too much, but not too little. You want to feel something. So it feels like you might call it a stretch, or it might be a sensation of pressure or something. Depends on the pose. And then you hold steady, relaxing into that intensity. The intention being that we can create some change, a hydration in our tissue, or a release of stored tension or pressure there. Sometimes sometimes we'll find that my joints kind of realign a little bit. So if things have been feeling a little tense or tight in a joint, it'll feel a little more loose or a little more viscous. And so there's a couple of different things that are happening, but we're trying to create a sense of fluid motion in the body. The goal of restorative yoga is simply to let go of tension. So we're letting go of the stress that we normally hold in our body, so that we're going forward from the practice having let ourselves take a little vacation from the normal amount of stress or tension that we might be carrying with us, because, life is sometimes quite intense. So we're going to be here for about another minute and a half. We're almost to the end here. I've moved my arm a couple times to just accommodate discomfort, so please do that as well. All right, so we're going to take a couple more deep breaths. And then we're going to exhale. Now hug your navel in just a little bit, so you've got a little bit of structure. And you're not just pulling the belly button back, you're kind of pulling the side waist in a little bit. And then that will help support us as we bring the knee back around that top leg first. And then I'm going to let that bottom leg come with me. I'm going to take my props out of the way here, and then let myself, just really settle onto the floor. And again, some windshield wipers Or you might just want to stretch out in Shavasana for a second and lay stable. I can really feel the difference in my body, the difference between my two hips and the way my side waist feels, and even the shoulder and my arms are slightly different. Oh, and I like it. That's my favorite part of yoga, is right in between two sides. So I'm going to give myself this little back massage, just kind of rocking the back on the floor. Oh, it's not the same as an actual massage, but it's something. All right, yogis, so I'm going to roll to my side and I'm going to sit myself up. I'm going to take my time, as will you. Okay. So we're essentially going to repeat those two poses on the other side. So you're going to want your blanket or your pillow, whatever you were using, under your side waist for that first side bendy pose. I'm going to scooch this way just a little bit. Okay. And then I'm going to bring that bolster right up to my hip. I'm going to lie down. I keep touching the mic. Sorry about that, you guys. I'm going to lie down. Ugh. I'm going to adjust my hip. Again, you might put a blanket under there so that you have something for your hip bone to land on. I am going to extend my legs slightly at an angle. And then probably I'm going to want a little pillow down there under that knee, just so that it feels like there's not as much spice going on here on my hip. Okay, so let's see. Test out this situation. You might want your arms slightly more forward. You might want it all the way forward, and then you prop up your head with pillows. And for me, what's feeling good right now is having my arm slightly forward. Let's try a blanket. Yeah, that feels pretty good. Okay. And so I might drape this arm over the top. That's feeling all right. You might put your arm over your hip or behind your back. All right, yogis, and then we're going to stay a while. And again, if you can, once you've sort of figured out, yep, I'm pretty well settled in, then come back to a nice, deep, smooth breath. Relax your jaw. Add more support if you're finding that you need it. So I just found that I could really use a little support under my lower arm bone for whatever reason. So I just took the edge of my yoga mat and just rolled it a little bit. And that's all it needed, was just that little bit of support for the carrying angle of my elbow. Don't be afraid to sort of see what's laying around you and add those little extra nuggets of support, those little tiny bits. If you find your mind kind of wandering off to things you've got to do, or, all the many things your mind will concentrate on, just remind yourself, oh yeah, I'm just breathing and relaxing. So we're consciously allowing ourselves to let go, stay present. So we're inside of our last minute here. So we're going to take 2 more big breaths. Let go with a sigh. All right, so the first thing is, take that top arm out of there. And then the second thing is that we're going to bring ourselves off of this prop that's under our ribs. Okay. And then I'm going to come back onto my back because I really liked that last time. So I'm going to do it again. And then let yourself have a moment just to let your spine kind of change shapes again. All right, so we're going to do this twist. So my upper back is where I want it to be, and then I need to add whatever props I want for my lower body. So a blanket or a pillow on the bottom. Knees bent and coming across. And then because I like to drape my top leg over a little bit, I want to support that part. So I'm going to put a pillow under there. I might have to do some rearranging here so that everything settles. And then again, I like to take a blanket and put it just under the top of my shoulder. And under my head, just so I've got a little bit of support for the shoulder that I'm turning away from. And then find should I do a cactus? Should it be more like a wing? Find the position for that arm. And your other arm can rest out or wherever it feels good. And once you've got yourself settled, take a nice big breath. And exhale out a big and let yourself relax. If you need a little bit more support, you can always add more, or you can add more support under your legs. Again, so that first minute for me is the time where I sort of try to notice, do I need to put the blankets or the pillows in a different place? And then after I've got that feeling pretty good, I try to relax. And it doesn't mean I'm not going to change the shape or the arrangement along the way. I might. But I want to first feel where I landed. And then make changes based on how it feels. If you're normally kind of fidgety, this can be really tricky, letting yourself really deeply relax. For most of my life, it was not the right yoga for me. I've grown into it a little bit, maybe aged into it, I don't know. But I really value it now. I think the truth is that I didn't realize for most of my life how much I was holding stress in my body, how much I was carrying tension. It's a lot under the radar screen, really. And so as I hold poses or as I kind of do these longer, slower practices, I become more aware of that tendency. The tendency for, it's almost like I'm gripping with all the muscles of my body to try to hold myself still. And there's a quality that I have occasionally been accused of, which is that I have what people call resting bitch face. If you've not heard this term, it is essentially you look angry all the time, or you look a little mad. And that is not untrue. I have carried tension in my face. It's a protective measure. It's, again, not something that's necessarily in my conscious mind that I was saying, I'm going to harden my face to be protected. But somehow the subconscious creates these patterns to sort of help. And so, being a woman in the world is not an easy thing to do. And there's a lot of unwanted attention, especially, maybe when you're younger. And so I developed these habits of kind of keeping my face very tense and looking hard and stern to stave off attention or to make myself seem imposing. And now I'm in a place in my life where I don't think that's as necessary, but sometimes it's hard to unwind those patterns. They're so deep and so old that you have to become really conscious of unwinding them. And such is the case with anything where we're holding stress and tension in the body. And so we're going to stay for about a little over another minute. Just letting the body relax as best you can. All right, yogis, we're going to take a nice big breath. Let go with a really big ah. All right, so I'm going to bring my head to the center. I'm going to slowly bring my leg back to the middle and then let the other one follow it. I'm going to let my arm relax and do some little windshield wipers with my legs. All right. So yogis, you can take a moment and roll onto your side and then prop yourself up to a seated position. It'll be easier for us to start this next pose from a seated position, and we can take a moment to kind of rinse out a little bit. Okay. So this is our next to last pose. Oh, that feels good. Whew. All right, yogis. Now, for this pose, it's helpful to have, I need a little blanket because I have a short neck. So I'm going to keep my little blanket up here. And then I need a blanket to go underneath my upper back. So the pose that we're going to do is, sometimes I've seen it called brook pose or river pose. I call it mountain stream because that evokes the image that we're trying to get to. So essentially what we're going to do is we're going to create some places that are like rocks, and then we're going to pour our body over the rocks like the way water flows over rocks in a river. Okay. Or in a mountain stream. So I'm going to take my blanket here and roll it up. And if it's too thick, you can unroll it a little bit, right? So that is going to go underneath my upper back, about at the level of my shoulder blades. So the way that I find it is right at the bottom of the breastbone. If you draw a line straight down, you're going to intersect this blanket. That's about the right spot. And then I also want something under my legs. Now I'm going to use this thicker bolster because it'll pull my legs up a little higher, and I find that pleasant. But you might need just a couple of throw pillows to put underneath your legs. That will work just fine. So you're going to get your props around and then swing your legs up over the pillows or the bolster, whatever you've got under your legs, you know, whatever you've got adjusted for your legs. And then you're going to kind of ease your way back here. And you may have to do a little bit of snuggling, like there. That's the spot, right? So I can feel like it's right under my breastbone, bottom of my breastbone. And then I'm going to, if your head feels good laying back like that, awesome. If you're like me and you have a really short neck and you need a little bit of support, then you're going to put that little bit of support. I put the little roll of blanket right under the neck. And then I still have this kind of slightly elevated chin, but it's not so intense. Okay. And then adjust, like, should the bolster be a little lower? Should it be a little higher? Once you've got, oh yeah, that's good. Once you've got your bolster in the right place, then you're going to let your arms rest. I love to do this kind of cactus shape, you know, like a swallow, or sometimes airplane wings. And you might want your arms down lower. So you're just going to find the right spot. And we're going to stay here for about 10 minutes. We're just going to let ourselves relax. So this is our back bend. Essentially what we've done, you guys, is we've put ourselves in an upside down little baby cobra pose. So there's a hip flexor release. That's the legs being elevated. And then we're able to get this little upper back elevated so that we've got that shape like a cobra. So we did a forward bend, we did a side bend, we did a twist. Now we're doing a back bend. Those are all the poses for the spine. So we've done all the movements that our spine is capable of doing. 2 side flexions, 2 side rotations, forward, that's called flexion, and then backward, that's called extension in the science world. So we've given our spine all the shapes that it's capable of doing. And hopefully by nourishing our spine, we've also given ourselves a chance to deeply relax the body all around. And holding these shapes kind of lets our spine hopefully feel restored and capable of its normal range of motion when we're done here. Now, if this gets too spicy in your low back, you can definitely adjust. Sometimes for me, just lifting the pelvis, curling the tailbone under, and then coming back down is all I need. Sometimes I need to go further up or down on the blanket. It never feels like a lazy boy recliner, but it does feel, it does get easier for me. So if it's not getting easier, it's getting spicier, definitely adjust. Relax your mouth. Relax your eyes. See if you can get so soft in your body that you feel your whole body breathing. The breath touches all the way down to your toes. So we're about halfway through here, yogis. Just pausing and breathing. Nowhere to go, nothing to do. On purpose. You may even fall asleep doing restorative yoga. And I say all the napping is better. But if you can stay awake, do. And concentrate on that beautiful, smooth breath. So we've got a couple minutes left here, yogis. Deep, smooth breaths. All right, yogis, we're going to take 3 more breaths. Now we're going to need to come out of this really slowly. So take a nice big inhale. And then with your exhale, you're going to kind of let your legs come up so that you can roll to your side. Because you're going to need to get this blanket out from under you. Or whatever you've got under your upper back. Okay. And then you can come back onto your back and let yourself do a little back massage yumminess. Oh. Now our last pose is either supported shavasana, which is to say you leave that bolster there or pillows and you stretch out your arms and you just let yourself relax for the last 10 minutes here or so. Or you can do what I'm going to do. I'm going to scoot myself all the way over to my beanbag chair, and I'm going to put my legs up on top of that. If my couch were over here instead of where you guys are in my living room, I would put my legs up on the couch. If you have a chair in your room, you can bring a chair in and put your legs up on the chair. Or if you happen to have an empty wall space, you can put your legs straight up on the wall and let them lean into the wall. That's an alternative, but it's a lovely way to end the practice. So I'm going to get myself all the way over there. Now, to get over here, I'm going to let myself scoot kind of sideways, like I'm sitting sideways against the little beanbag chair. I'm going to get my hips really close. Okay, so then I'm right up on it. And then I'm going to lie back down, taking a pillow or a blanket with me. Move this out of the way. Oh, sorry to wiggle you guys so much. Okay. Anywho, okay. So then I'm going to get up here and scoot as close to this as I can, because I want my thighs resting on the back of whatever it is. So resting against the couch, resting against the chair, pretty close. Sometimes, especially with a chair, if the chair is taller, the bottom of the chair is taller than my femur bone is long, I might need to put a blanket up under the hip. So you can do that as well. And then add the padding that you might want for your head. I've moved myself like right into a sunbeam. So I'm going to craft a light barrier. Oh no, that's not going to work. Okay, never mind. I'm going to do that with a blanket. So you can take a little blanket, put it over top of your eyeballs. Or if you've got like one of those cool little sleep masks, you can do that. And then just let your legs relax. So whether they're upright, like mine are, or whether they're out straight, our last pose here is just to let ourselves relax for the remaining time we have together. So find that position that feels just right. And come back to that sense of your mouth and your eyes relaxed completely. Notice the crown of your head and let the crown of your head relax. You might have to soften the muscles that live around the ears or around the eyes. Relax the mouth and the lips. Allow the shoulder blades and the collarbones and the upper chest muscles to soften gently. Allow the arm bones to relax, and it might be that you even need like a tiny bend in the elbow. So make those little adjustments. Allow the palms to relax. Feel the back of the hips drop heavy into the floor. And feel the femur bones, the big leg bones, drop heavy into the hip sockets. Relax the calf muscles and the soles of the feet. And let your whole body relax. Now, yogis, keep yourself present for just a little bit longer. Allowing your body to stay relaxed. But just bring your mind back to your breath. Notice all the little parts of the breath. So the inhale, and then the tiny moment before it turns into an exhale, and then the exhale itself. And that tiny moment before the inhale drops back in. So you're going to take a nice big breath. Let go with a really big ah. And then without moving the rest of the body, just start with your fingers and toes. Just wiggle them, stretch them out. Oh, and then wiggle them again. Do that a couple times. Just stretch them out. Wiggling them. Oh, and then move the wrist and ankles. Ooh. And then give yourself a stretch through the upper body, maybe the lower body as well. Ooh. You can bring your knees in, give yourself a little hug, a little back massage. Again, I like to stay on my side for a bit before I sit up. So I'm going to roll to my side, working around all my props here. Oh, there is such a thing as too much stuff, for sure. In any case, we're going to take a moment and just pause. And then we're going to sit ourselves up when you're ready. Now, basically what we've just done, yogis, is we've spent about an hour and a little longer meditating. So hopefully your mind and your body feel refreshed and you're ready to start your day in a more kind of calm and relaxed way. Thank you for joining me. Namaste.